Hey folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to this new episode of the Rise Up Radio. And today I have with me Bob Mosher. Bob, welcome to the Rise Up Radio.
It's an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to the dialogue.
Awesome. So, folks, Bob brings over 2 decades of experience in learning and development space, and he's currently serving as the founder and chief learning evangelist at Apply Synergies. And he's successfully led key L&D efforts across Microsoft, Intuitive, and Skillsoft earlier. So, Bob, would you like to do justice to your career by sharing a bit of your work with the audience? I don't think I can do justice in 2 or 3 sentences. So, why don't you talk about some of your work that you've done in the past?
Sure. Well, many of us in L&D, like many of us in L&D, I'm kind of here by happenstance. I mean, I did intentionally get into this as a degree 43 years ago, believe it or
Wow.
not. Yeah, as what I thought would be a career public school teacher, which
Hmm.
is my original degree. And several years into that, I got my master's in computer education, as we called it, and adult learning, and that kind of thrust me into the journey that we've been on since. You mentioned Microsoft and such. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's really been a crazy ride through everything, from chalkboards to AI is
Yeah.
kind of my journey.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but yeah, it's been I've been blessed to be pulled into a lot of things, kicking and screaming in some cases, but a lot of what we'll talk about today is because I've always felt unsettled about instruction, if that makes any
Yep.
sense. And so
Hmm.
I was a lousy learner
Yep.
through most of my career and was pulled into education to see if I could have an impact. So
Right.
I'm looking forward to the dialogue.
Very interesting transition, Bob. And I must say this is a very common. I'm seeing a lot of commonalities between going from education to learning and development, and that's a very common career path for a lot of L&D professionals that I'm interacting with these days. And a lot of them are coming from an education background, going into corporate learning background, because obviously there are a lot of commonalities for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Part of it was, making a living, to
Yep.
be completely transparent. My daughter came along and public school teachers, where I taught didn't make a whole lot, honestly.
Yep.
And I was very intrigued by this adult arena. Computers had literally just hit the desktop. I mean that
Yep.
literally. I was fortunate to just come along during that time. And
Yep.
so had no idea what that meant, but stepped into it. And it's been just again, I don't just do IT anymore per se,
Hmm.
but boy,
Hmm.
yeah, I was fortunate to be in the
Yep.
beginning of that whole, groundswell of things. So yeah, so the
Right.
education background's helped. In some ways, though, we'll talk about today. It has its bias
Hmm.
that I think get in the way sometimes
Yep.
of where I think
And
we
that's a
should be.
legacy that we are bringing in the LNG systems even today, right? I mean, that's what we're going to challenge today in our conversation, isn't it? Right? That legacy mindset and how do we ditch it in a nutshell, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, folks, that's exactly what we're going to discuss with Bob today, which is looking at future, right? What can be a possible framework for future-ready learning and development functions, and how do you start looking at skill development in a more strategic manner? And like Bob said, pitching instructions because a lot of times instructions don't work with everyone, right? So, Bob,
Yeah.
we're going to jump right into it, right? Uh, let's go back first. What drew you to workflow learning instead of classroom learning? So, what are the key differences that you see in workflow learning versus classroom training? That you profess.
Yeah, again, each one of these pivots for me was out of necessity. I was at a very senior job at Microsoft at the time, which I loved actually.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some challenges in the industry at the time with e-learning coming along. That was why I was
Right.
hired there, was to help with their e-learning initiative. And I think that was a huge wake-up call to us as an industry because here we had this just-in-time thing,
Hmm.
or so we thought. And um, what it taught us when we looked back on it was, did it really, move the dime uh, in a performance way? And
Correct.
and for me, it wasn't. And so I moved on from Microsoft because I was really intrigued with this idea of, is training enough
Hmm.
in any form? And
Hmm.
and e-learning, as wonderful as it is, as
Hmm.
a dear friend of mine says, it was a modality shift. It wasn't necessarily a methodology shift.
Yeah.
And so, it was another flavor of training, way
Right.
more efficient, cheaper,
Yep.
just in time, all those things, smaller, chunked, all those
Yep.
wonderful things. But in the
Hmm.
end, we'll talk about the 5 moments of need in a moment. It was really still training. And I want to be careful there because I don't mean that it was bad.
Right.
Um, but I was pulled into this idea when I met this gentleman named Dr. Conrad Gottfredson that maybe training alone is not enough
Yep.
to do what we're called to do. And so
Yep.
workflow learning was an area I was not familiar with, but was pulled into by this idea that maybe we can have a greater impact beyond the classroom
Hmm.
in the workflow in an
Hmm.
intentional way than
Hmm.
we were doing. And that's sort of been my focus for the last 2 decades.
Yep. And you're absolutely right, right? It's not the same dish in a new package. It has to be a totally new recipe altogether, right? To be able to create a new impact. So let's take an example, Bob, right? Let's take sales rep, for example, right? How does a traditional training classroom kind of a mode works for a sales rep versus, workflow learning using the 5 moments of need? So if you can walk us through.
Sure, sure. Well, the 5 moments of need, to sort of ground us there is, there's new and more, which are when I don't know anything and I
Hmm.
want to know more things,
Hmm.
but I have an understanding,
Hmm.
right? That was the first 20 years of my career.
Hmm.
That's what training does.
Right.
What Dr. Gottfredson found in his research and his real world experience beyond his PhD was that, if you've heard of the 70-20-10 framework, all these
I
other
have.
things, what
Yep.
that's always told us is that the majority of learning happens while doing
Great.
and in the workflow,
Correct.
right? Either with the help of others or trial and
Yourself.
error,
Or by
right?
making
So
error. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
right. So to go to the example around sales and other kinds of things, what it really means is that sure, people have to learn the CRM,
Yep.
for instance, and
Hmm.
sure they have to learn the sales process, for
Yep.
instance.
Hmm.
But even practicing, doing, assessing, modeling, all in the
Yep.
classroom or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that I can make the jump to applying when
Yep.
I'm back in my job. So what we've got our arms around is this idea of building for apply first,
Hmm.
not new and more first.
Hmm.
Build tools and structures and frameworks that exist in the flow of work that
Right.
people are taught and use while doing. And so, a salesperson, for instance, when they have to go through the classic lead to close, prospect to close sales
Yep.
process,
Yep.
it's they are during the flow of that work with the CRM and outside of it, frankly,
Hmm.
they are guided through getting that work done, and at the same time they learn, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, some of those things will and should have been taught in training,
Yep.
but as we know from cognitive science, a lot's forgotten, and a
90%
lot
of
and
it.
very little is transferred and applied.
Correct.
So it's really a focus on those precious moments of apply, solve, and change.
True. 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 So it's in essence, it's basically learning by doing, right? And when somebody's doing, you provide the right, either suggestions or tips or learning material at that particular point of time or nudges to be able to make sure that they do it properly. And once they do it properly, they don't forget it for the future, right? Now, that could be a system, that could be a buddy, that could be a coach, that could be a mentor, that could be anybody who's enabling that learning as you're doing it, isn't it? In a nutshell, if I were to rephrase what you said.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think the where it becomes a discipline and what I would call workflow learning is when you take all those things you mentioned and you give it structure
True.
and because those have been around forever.
Yep.
The reality though is that they're not efficient,
Yep.
and a mentor could be wrong
Yep.
or not available or these kinds of things. So it's taking those. Yeah, it's interesting. Workflow learning is new, I think, as a discipline, but
Hmm.
it's not new as a approach.
True.
Any learner that's in the workflow has stuck post-it notes to their monitors
Correct.
for years,
Correct.
or bother their neighbor,
Correct.
trying to get work done. What we've not done as a discipline is we've not gone into that domain and helped better architect that
Yeah.
experience in the most effective and efficient way.
I agree. I think most of it has been an individual's own effort to learn on the job, which has been most unstructured rather than a structured process that an organization can run. And I think the biggest difference would be now, at least with technology coming in, is that earlier there was no technology to help, in this effort, but now there is technology and AI that can actually support a lot of these on-the-job learning in the flow of work, isn't it?
Yeah, the 1991, Gloria Geary wrote a book called Electronic Performance Support Systems.
Hmm.
1991.
Hmm.
That was 30 plus
Yep.
years ago, right?
Right.
I would say less than 1% of us read it.
Yep.
And so, so there's the technology, I would argue, has been around a long time.
Yep.
It's just not been in our domain, right?
Right.
We've been e-learning. We were tantalized by e-learning for a while. We obviously made instruction in classrooms,
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
But to your point, that is as long ago as that the platforms existed. Now they were super expensive, very myopic in their focus,
Right.
like any emerging thing would be.
Right.
But
Right.
in the last 20 years, a lot of them have been remarkable. And of course,
Yep.
AI, which we'll talk
Yep.
about, is a big part of accelerating all that.
Yep.
So I guess my point would be to your listeners is this isn't new.
Yep.
Um, but what it is, if I can be so bold, because I've been doing it at this forever and talked to tens of thousands of you out there,
Hmm.
is that we've just been blind to it.
Yep.
Or frankly, if I can be a little more direct too, I think we've chosen not to
Not to focus on it.
embrace
Yep.
it,
Yep.
right? And
I think
so it's a brave new
easy
world.
easy does it, right? So if you have something easier, it's easier to adopt and then keep moving, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And friend, I think we have to be careful there because I would argue it's not served us well, right?
Yep.
Everyone of your
I agree.
listeners probably have heard of the acronym ROI in their lifetime.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I spent 20 years trying to associate a classroom with ROI and I couldn't, and so,
There's no way to actually translate that learning into behavior and then measure that behavior, right? And if you can't do that, then there is no ROI calculation anyway, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, Jack and Patty Phillips are remarkable, experts on this
Hmm.
ROI thing. They run
Hmm.
the ROI Institute,
Hmm.
and there's a big difference between causation and correlation,
Yep.
right? And so we always correlated the classroom to impact. I mean, I think few people would argue if it was decent that
Hmm.
it had an impact,
Yep.
but an ROI on performance, on
Yep.
productivity,
Right.
mm,
Yep.
so
Not measurable.
we're to get pulled kicking and screaming into this thing, like it or not.
Correct. So let's talk about AI, Bob, right? What makes AI fundamentally different? I know, you folks are doing a lot of work in the AI space right now. We are doing a lot of work in the AI space as well. As for you, what is fundamentally different in terms of tech that did not exist earlier, and that's what AI is enabling now?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, two things I think, because I think it's impacting two sides of our industry, and I think we have
Hmm.
to be careful that we realize they are two things.
Hmm.
Again, they're fine, but I think we have to be clear about that. And obviously, number one, with generative AI, is accelerating what we do
Hmm.
in ways that have hurt us forever, like SME.
Which is more of the content creation, the instructional side, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can make a mobile e-learning in 10 minutes now.
10 minutes
You
now,
know, now
which should
I think
take
we
you
have to be
months earlier.
careful. Yeah, we have to be careful because I've been fooled now. Well, I've been pulled in by things that were quick before too, and I learned very fast that quick doesn't mean good.
Correct.
So we still have responsibility to evaluate the instructional
Yep.
soundness,
Yep.
effectiveness based on what we've been taught of those
Yep.
things. But my gosh, it used to take weeks,
Yep.
right? So that side of it's fine. The other side of it we have to be aware of though, and by the way, there's a lot of effort in that side of work right now. The generative
Yep.
side,
Yep.
there's a ton. And I get
Right.
it.
Right.
It's the low hanging fruit.
Correct.
But the way I started my story is that it's still training.
Yep.
In many ways, it's not workflow learning. It is still
100%.
training faster.
Correct.
So where I'm excited about AI is that not only does it do that, but what it does on what we call the digital coach side of things,
Hmm.
which is the EPSS of
Hmm.
Gloria's time of
Hmm.
today,
Hmm.
the way AI can assist as a UI to our learners in
Yep.
the workflow,
Yep.
using
Hmm.
structured content, validated content.
Yep.
It's just so again, the two sides are the development side, and there's
The
the
user experience side, right?
yeah,
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 the
and
learner side, basically. Yep.
yep,
Yep.
yep. And we got to be aware of both.
No, absolutely. I think there's this question of, are we overhyping AI? For me, I don't think that's a question. I think the real advantages of AI are real. But like you said, we have to be careful in terms of how we are applying it. I think the first one, like you rightly said, it's more of the same, but just faster. Whereas the other one has the potential to dramatically change how learning happens, right? So you move actually from training and you go to learning, which translates into behaviors and hence productivity and performance. I think for me, I'm really excited about the second part, which is can we enable learners in organizations to learn better and translate that into behavior change? For me, I think that's where the meat and the real excitement is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think what I think we need to be thinking about our industry is vocabulary, right? I
Yeah,
mean, so for me, we use the word learning a lot
yeah,
in our industry, and I
yeah,
think that's uh, I've talked to managers before about their folks.
yeah.
They don't want their people learning, they want their people performing. They don't want them
Right,
learning.
right.
They if they could skip learning and get to performance, they would
They would
prefer
prefer
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, so and by the way, performance can beget learning,
yeah,
but there really is an order of operation here.
true.
And so I think for me, it's been, learning slash training to performance to productivity.
Hmm.
And in the end, we're measured by productivity, not even by performance,
Correct,
honestly, because I can
correct,
be performing badly,
correct.
right? So it's really about, in the end, if my performance manifests itself in a highly productive
Hmm.
way, then that's the sweet spot. And to your
Yeah,
point, my friend, that's where AI is going to play a remarkable role.
yeah,
And we have to learn. I think we have to look at it from the productivity back.
that's
If
true.
we look at it from the learning forward,
Correct.
we're going to get stuck in the same old,
Same loop.
thing we always do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bob, so we are right now in the middle of the week. What should the L&D leaders do differently starting Monday morning?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, they have to become AI literate and
Hmm.
fluent. It amazes me how few of us are dabbling the way we should.
Yeah,
Right. So I think we have to look at the world of prompting, the world of, the chat GPTs of the world, the platforms that lay on top of that,
yeah,
the difference between prompting and agentic stuff. We have to know the vernacular,
yeah.
right? Because if we're going to play in that world, we don't have to be, a coder per se in it, because
Correct.
the platforms are and have come along
True.
that help that. But I think we
True.
have to know, because part of it is that there's a huge ambiguity in the world right now with what that means. Now, and
Yeah,
by the way, unlike e-learning that really was just our domain differently, AI
correct.
is not a learning thing alone.
It's
It's
different.
impacting every aspect of the business, right?
Correct.
So I think Monday morning we have to go in and find out, do a little R&D.
Hmm.
What is your, I use this loosely, AI strategy within your organization? Now, I say it loosely because a lot of them are bad
They don't
or
know.
really don't
They
even
don't
exist.
have
Yeah,
one.
they don't
Yeah,
even exist yet,
correct.
right?
Correct.
So, but I think that's a good thing, right? Because
Yeah.
then wait, why I think if that's the case, then here's the other thing, you better
You
get
become the
involved.
orchestrator. You become the orchestrator for it.
Yeah, you gotta, because if I may, and I say this lovingly, I worked for Microsoft for part of my life.
Yeah.
A lot of this is residing in the IT group.
Yeah.
And I'll be candid,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want the IT group only
Yeah.
driving this train.
You
You know,
can't,
it's
because there's a lot of functionality, functional aspects to it that need to be brought in from the domains, right? And
Mhm.
can only be brought in by the domain specialists in a nutshell.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're the learning professionals. We're
Yep.
L&D,
Absolutely.
learning and development
Correct.
professionals, right? So
Correct.
so IT has to have its say in security, LLM, all that other kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
get that.
Correct.
But at the same time, we have to be in there at the table discussing the
Yeah.
application, the
Yeah.
design, all those other kinds of
Yeah.
things. And I think that's something we can start doing
Yeah.
tomorrow.
So, Bob, there's a prerequisite to it, right? And I've been having these conversations a lot, right? I think one of the biggest prerequisites to achieving this, what you said, is actually a mindset shift that needs to happen.
Mm,
And that mindset needs to probably
100%.
shift to be a little bit more inquisitive, to be a little bit more risk taking, to be
Hmm.
little bit more in terms of trial and error and not expecting everything to work perfectly in the first go. The way we have typically
Perfect.
been used to that you know what, the systems have to be perfect before we adopt it. No, it's not going to be like that. I think for me the biggest aspect is that L&D has to become partners in the race, in the journey to make the systems perfect rather than wait for systems to become perfect. What's your
100%.
take on that?
Yeah, 100%. I say that we have to go from a training mindset to one of performance. And if you go performance first, that means you're looking at the work through the eyes of the business, and
Yeah,
therefore all the things you just said apply,
yeah,
right? I have to be agile. I have to
yeah,
be business focused. I have to be fail forward. I have to be iterative. I have to understand that change is the new normal, not, there's very little to no stability in business anymore,
yeah,
right? And so all those things will pull us, though, to your point, into a
yeah,
domain that we're not familiar with. We like
yeah,
waterfall stuff.
yeah, yeah,
We like, versioning and, content management and control,
yeah.
our LMSs with learning paths and all these
Right.
things. And again, I'm careful because I can even hear my tone. It sounds like I'm getting, like I'm being antagonistic about that. And friends, I'm not,
Yeah.
because that is still in the mix.
True.
I'm just saying, to your point, that's looking at it from a training first mindset,
Correct.
and that's going to hurt us because we are not risk averse with that
Correct.
mindset. We
Correct.
are, we tend to be a lagger, not a leader.
Right.
We tend to be an order taker, not a strategic
Right.
partner.
Right.
And to everything you described, if we're going to have an impact and have a seat at the table, I've always hated that expression, but then we have a completely different mindset around this than we traditionally go in with.
It's very interesting, Bob, that you mentioned processes, right? Because I think one of the biggest shifts that also needs to happen is how we looking at the process itself, right? So the traditional thought process has been, let's identify the gaps, let's identify the training needs, let's build training, let's roll out training, and then let's hope that it works. I think all this workflow is going to flip on its head, like you rightly said, right? It's going to start from
Hmm.
the user first, understand the challenges, and they are going to drive their own performance and their own
Yeah.
development rather than being mandated by the L&D teams in a way which is a very structured process, right? I think
Yeah.
if the two of us are two individuals working in an organization, your learning journey would be very different from my learning journey, right? It should be very different, ideally, and that needs to change drastically. And the older processes which are encoded in the systems, they don't work
Yeah.
anymore in the new paradigm, isn't it?
And again, that's a training first approach, right? I've always amazed me how we identify skills gaps before we even know what the work is.
Correct.
How what that just makes no sense to me,
True.
right? But again, you're right. When someone walks to my office and says, "I want 5 days of leadership training,"
Yeah.
then the train has left the station.
True.
I'm making leadership training. It's going to be 5 days.
Right.
I'm going to sit with a SME in a room who probably isn't even a leader anymore to
Correct.
tell me what leadership is. But to your point, and what I'm going to take heart in is there are methodologies like rapid workflow analysis, for instance, and things that are in the methodology we
And are still
teach
useful. Yes.
that is a systematic way of going out into the business and saying, look, before we build anything, we understand any skills gaps, if there are
Correct.
any, we have
Correct.
to first know the work,
Correct.
right? And then if we work from the workflow back, that's the only way to make workflow learning,
Yep.
is to understand, just like for training, the only way to do
Yep.
training is to understand, the outline.
Yeah.
right? Well, this is analogous to that, and you're absolutely right. It's a reverse engineering of how we've done things,
Mhm.
some new skills. But if we don't make that shift, it won't happen. Doesn't
Right.
happen.
So let's brainstorm that a little bit, Bob, right? So let's say a typical workflow in this mode would be you start with a role, you understand what makes that role productive or perform to a high level, what is required to attain that productivity, which is basically what skills or competencies are required, and then you move to the training aspects, isn't it? And you're doing this role by role.
Yeah.
And with AI, you can basically do this very simply and faster rather than making your Excel tables, and collecting feedback from thousands and thousands of people in the organization, and then coming to a skill gap analysis, which becomes a very tedious 6 month exercise in itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's we use three, well, four categories, right? And the fundamental element of work is a task, a
Hmm.
job task,
Yep.
right? Job tasks make processes. Processes make workflows.
Yep.
Tasks are supported by steps,
Yep.
and 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 it, and you understand what you're doing through what we call supporting knowledge, right? So,
Yep.
so task, supporting knowledge, processes to workflows, and then steps. Well, to
Hmm.
your point, that's structure, my friend,
Yep. Yep.
right?
That is
AI
structure.
is brilliant at structure,
Correct. Correct.
right? Now we got to, and I got to be careful here because the more structured of things it gets, the better it is at it,
Yep.
right? And so there's a lot of things, a lot of ways we can play here.
Hmm.
And in many cases, a lot of training is for something that's never been done before.
Hmm.
So it's tough to guess at that,
True.
without some kind of analysis. So
Yep.
yeah, we've seen RWA, rapid workflow analysis, reduced by over 75%,
Hmm.
over 75% with
Yep.
AI
Yep.
as part of the building blocks, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's going to accelerate everything.
Absolutely. Cool, Bob. Thank you so much. We are coming towards the end of our session today. So, any parting thoughts, any parting advice that you have for our audience?
Yeah, guys, I in my 40 years, I've been through a lot of changes, right? I mean, I literally we're talking chalkboards. Like when I got into
Mhm.
this, we had chalkboards, right? We didn't have whiteboards then. We had
We've
overhead,
seen
overhead
entire
projectors.
generation of systems built
You know, we
and
had
then go away now.
we had film strip projectors,
Yeah.
that we used to turn when the audio beeped, if people
Yeah.
remember those days, right?
Yeah.
So, and look where we sit today.
Yeah.
And the what I wanted people to walk away with is that this AI is a major pivot,
Hmm.
like other ones have been, but maybe one of the biggest ever. And we can either embrace it
Yeah.
or we can, push back on it,
Yeah.
or we can be afraid of it,
Yeah.
right? And I think the window is open, at least right now,
Yeah.
for us to find a powerful place that I think we've always wanted to be in, as long as I've been at it. But to your point earlier, friend, it's going to take some risk taking. It's going to take
Correct.
some uncomfortableness. It's going to take
Correct.
not knowing. It's
Correct.
going to take some things like proof of concepts that aren't
Yep.
fully baked
Yep.
or even MVPs yet.
Correct. Correct.
And it's okay. The world
Yep.
is okay with that.
Yep. Yep.
But if we don't become okay with that, we're going to get, if I may say, left behind,
Correct.
right? So
And
let's get on board.
this is our chance to not get left
Absolutely.
behind versus other functions because they are going to adopt AI very, very rapidly. Look at sales, look at marketing, look at operations, look at supply chain. They're all going to
Yep.
adopt AI rapidly. HR and L&E function. Again, this is an opportunity to catch up and be ahead of the race. So I think
Yeah, we can
that's
be, we can
golden
be
words.
we can be an accelerator or strategic, or we can
Correct.
be a weight and
Correct.
an obstacle. I'd rather be the first.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bob. It was a very, very fun conversation with you today, and I'm sure our audience is going to love it as well.
Well, appreciate the time. Looking forward to continued dialogue. Thanks for inviting me. Really enjoyed it.
Likewise. All right, folks, there you have it. I'm sure you're going to have fun watching this video with Bob. You folks take care till I see you with the next episode of the Rise Up Radio. Bye bye.
Take care. Thanks.